Section 403B2D, and Section 6 of the Stanford City Council Rules of Procedure as amended and adopted August 3rd, 2021, reflecting recent recommendations of the U.S. CDC and an adoption by the State of Maine CDC pertaining to the conduct of meetings indoors in the public space. Members of the public may join the meeting by phone by dialing 1-929-205-6099 using meeting ID 815-7802-6094 and password 325838, or via computer at the link provided on the city's website. Members of the public may also submit comments via the City of Stanford website at www.stanfordmaine.org under email City Department City Council. Meeting will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Councilor Brink, who will also lead us in a moment of silence. If everyone other than Councilor Brink could please mute their computers, it would be appreciated. Councilor Brink, the floor is yours.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, if we could have a moment of silence for our Councilman Tuttle and his family. Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Brink. We're all thinking of Councilor Tuttle. Okay, first item. I'm going to call the roll. Councilor Brink.
Present.
Councilor Martell.
Present.
Councilor Hanselman.
Present.
Councilor Tuttle is absent with notice. Councilor Stackpole.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Hurley.
Present, and someone is telling me they can't see the meeting on channel 26.
Okay, thank you for that information. And I am Anne Marie Mastracchio. I serve as the mayor of the City of Stanford. This evening we're joined by City Manager Stephen Buck and Larissa Ricketts, the City Manager's Executive Assistant. Minutes 22-30-01. Order to approve the minutes from the regular City Council meeting held on Tuesday, January 4th, 2022. Do I have a motion to approve as written?
Move.
Motion by Councilor Stackpole. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Brink. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Councilor Brink?
Yes.
Councilor Martell?
Yes.
Councilor Hanselman?
Yes.
Councilor Stackpole?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hurley? You're muted.
No, sorry. Something popped up when I tried to click it. Yes.
Okay, and I am also yes. That is unanimous of all those present. 22-31-01. Order to approve the minutes from the executive session of the City Council held on Tuesday, January 4th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilor Stackpole. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Councilor Hanselman. A motion and a second. I'll call the roll. Councilor Brink?
Yes.
Councilor Martell?
Yes.
Councilor Hanselman?
Yes.
Councilor Stackpole?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hurley?
Yes.
And I am also a yes. That is unanimous of all those present. Next item, Mayor's Report, City Council Subcommittee reports. I will begin, and then I know there are other people who will be making some reports for items that are not addressed on tonight's agenda. So the Municipal Operations and Property Subcommittee received an update on the Midtown Mall parking improvements from Community Development Director Ian Housfield. The walkway has been completed and the benches are in place, but the lighting for the walkway won't be completed until spring as the new light fixture poles are on back order. And the landscaping will also be installed in the spring. The stairway that leads to St. Ignatius Street is missing railings. The city will replace them, even though it is not completely clear who actually owns and is responsible for the stairway maintenance and repair. There was further discussion of the need to raise revenue for maintenance and capital improvements in the parking lot. It was the consensus of the subcommittee that the taxpayer should not be shouldering this expense, and the city manager was tasked with the development of a special assessment district that would include all of the businesses benefiting from the use of the lot. This information will then be brought back to the City Council for review and any necessary action. Code Enforcement Officer Jamie Cole reported to the committee that a piece of land on Sherburne Street in Stanford is being split to create 2 new house lots, and therefore the entire street will have to be renumbered. As there are 2 Sherburne Streets, one in Stanford and one in Springdale, he said this would be a good time to address this violation in the 911 system by changing the name of the Stanford Street. A Zoom meeting will be scheduled with the subcommittee, staff, and impacted residents who will be asked for their input on the name change. And then the city's communications coordinator will develop an info packet to help residents change addresses with the post office, credit card companies, etc. It was the committee's recommendation that this should be the start of renaming all of the streets in the city that violate the E911 rules, such as Grammar Street, Grammar Road, Grammar Ave, and Berwick Street, Berwick Ave, and Berwick Road. But that the process would move forward slowly, one street at a time. This is, however, a serious public safety issue that needs to be resolved. It will also solve ongoing problems and confusion with mail and package delivery, mortgages, and similar issues having to do with addresses. A bus shelter will be constructed in the spring on city-owned property adjacent to Stanford Housing Authority building on School Street. It will replace the stop in the School Street city parking lot by the post office. This work is being done in partnership with York County Community Action and the Stanford Housing Authority. And the monthly city leadership team meeting was held and it included newly elected school committee chair Paul Cody and vice chair Amy Seveny. A review of the budget process and COVID update were followed by a discussion on the future use of Willard School and the fate of the Anderson Learning Center and Lafayette School. There will be changes and initiatives that will be proposed by the school committee as part of the budget process, and the council will be informed of them when they're ready to make their plans known. I think that's all I have this evening. Councillor Hanselman, did you have a public safety subcommittee update that you'd like to make?
I do, thank you. And you can share if I'm too lengthy or not, having this be my first one. But the Public Safety Subcommittee did meet on January 11th. We had a presentation by Matt Hill, Director of Public Works, on possible consideration of safety improvements at the intersection of Pioneer and Emory Streets. There has been a marked increase in traffic accidents with a fairly high critical rate factor at this intersection. So Maine DOT is going to perform a modeling study on that intersection in great part to determine if it's a location or a candidate, if you will, for a 4-way stop. The concern is that if vehicles stack up as you're headed up the hill on Emory Street, there could be issues with a 4-way stop. So we'll get that study back from Maine DOT and hear from Matt and determine how to move forward from there. There was also some brief discussion about the intersection of School Street and Emory as well. Police Department updates were great. We had a little congratulations to Officer Nicole Root on graduating from the Maine Criminal Justice Academy. We also congratulated Officer Gary Cray, who's a new hire to the PD, but not new to Stanford, longtime resident and Stanford alumni. On the opposite side of our 2 new positions, we also celebrated the retirement of Officer Sear and Officer Johns, who retired this past month. There was note that there are 2 more retirements in February, so we'll be actively recruiting for additional officers again at the police department. There was a brief conversation about concerns about people living outside these extremely cold temperatures, and the fact that Detective Adams is well connected with people living outside and can offer up resources, including connection with York County shelter programs and others. And then on a kind of a fun note, we heard from Ms. Sherry, is it Boucher? Sorry, on some community building efforts that PD's doing, including a fun holiday Secret Santa and a puzzle table. So they're trying to do some community building. And then finally, DC Small shared his appreciation for our officers that help spread some cheer over the holidays. 2 more quick items. DC Small shared an update on concerns about the Durian neighborhood road safety. We had posted our speed sign, did an initial speed study, but that will be followed up by Matt Hill to review and report back at the next Public Safety Committee. And then, of course, we heard from Ian Housesale on the COVID update with no significant surprises if you're watching the news these days. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanselman. That was perfect. Councillor Stackpole, did you have a couple of updates?
Yep, we have two subcommittees. Zoning subcommittee met last week. We continue to discuss the ordinances surrounding the retail sale of marijuana in the city of Stanford. The ordinances have been revised. They've been reviewed by us also, and they're in the planning process now. And there was, I don't know if anybody has any kind of update how this went, but there was going to be a public hearing at the planning level. I think it was last Wednesday.
Tomorrow night. Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night. Okay.
Tomorrow night.
Yeah. I'm a week ahead of myself here, or a week behind, I guess, depending on how you look at it. So that's, if you're interested in chiming in, there is that public hearing coming up tomorrow night. Also, Solid Waste Committee met. We had an extensive discussion about basically litter and also recyclables that blow out of containers, as I'm sure probably happened in many places today. So we had a discussion on trying to standardize on a recyclable container that had a lid that would be available from local retailers, and that is in the works. We're putting the specifications together to do that. Moving on in the same discussion to litter in general, we determined that we were giving the city manager the okay to put in the budget funds for so that the city could join Keep America Beautiful. And there are many resources that are available through that membership. It's not a great deal of money. It's $3,500. And we just put it in the budget. We'll discuss it at budget time, whether it stays or whether it doesn't. But I think it will bring some tremendous benefits to the city and help us clean up some of these areas that are in need. And let me just say, I would say at the subcommittee level, I've kind of been a driving force recently behind litter, although Detective Chief Smalls certainly is the one who brought it to my attention. I want to give everybody credit where credit's due. But people, what I'm seeing out there when I walk around the streets are cigarette butts and nip bottles. And again, trash blowing out of recycled containers. This is the majority of stuff that's out there. If you smoke, that's great, but please don't throw your butts out the window and find something else to do with your nip containers. I mean, that's not the only thing. Cigarette packages, things like that. We can do a better job than this as a community. And again, just one more second. I mean, what I do when I go for my daily walk, when it's warm enough to walk, is I go down by my house around the end of the pond by the Armory and walk up River Street. And that's the area that we're talking about, continuing the path around the pond, making walkways and bikeways and greenways, if you will, along there. If you walk along there, you'd be embarrassed by just the trash and rubbish that's there. It's not the residents that are on the street that are causing the issue. It's that it's a busy street and people are just tossing things out their windows. So please help out.
Thank you, Councillor Stackpole. And I will remind people that there is a deposit on nip bottles. So if you see any, they're 5 cents. And thank you. Now we'll go to the city manager's report. Go ahead, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you. So for this evening, I want to start off with some positive points focused on public works. We received notification on the 14th of January that the Maine Department of Transportation's 3-year work plan book is to be published soon. And in there, we were made aware that we will be receiving funding for a park and ride facility here in Stanford, as well as a grant for street sign improvements. So the first, the park and ride, this stems from the joint land use study with Portsmouth Naval Shipyard and the town of Kittery, and the high number of shipyard workers living in Stanford, using van pools, a number of commuting individual, and a number of people commuting individually. The van pools have had difficulty over the years finding dedicated parking, especially in the winter months, and the need for a permanent solution was identified. We've worked with the Joint Land Use Study and the Maine Department of Transportation for the past year. We performed initial design and estimates internally, and in 2021, we're invited to submit a letter of interest to the Maine Department of Transportation, and that is now turned into this the reward that's pending for the 3-year work plan. It has a budget of $202,653. The layout is, as you see here in the picture, it's to be behind Cumberland Farms, off in Emerson Street. That is the vacant portion of the Emerson School lot that is yet to be developed. The city retained ownership of that post-development of the current Cumberland Farms that's there on the site. And in a forward-looking motion, we retained a right-of-way off in Emerson Street to the proposed park and ride facility, and we also have clearance to utilize the exiting out the entrance, the Main Street entrance at the 4-way lit intersection that was created by Cumberland Farms. So very positive development for the city. I would note that the remaining piece here likely will never be developed into parking. That will be used for stormwater treatment as far as runoff from the parking lot facility itself. Signs, our Director Hill applied for, and MDOT will potentially award what's called a Heads Up Pedestrian Safety Project grant for replacement and upgrade of warning signs demarcating the crosswalks to improve pedestrian safety. Grant will be in the amount of $71,335, of which the city had already programmed in $25,000 in the CIP for the pending 22-23 capital program, so we'll be able to meet the 20% match on that. The improvements will be made to all pedestrian crossings currently in the city of Stanford. The next piece of the Maine Department of Transportation.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
Will we have the opportunity to widen the sidewalk, the crosswalks? I mean, I am really concerned about visibility and making sure that the crosswalks are not too close to the parking. And I know that is striped out there, but sometimes it's still, people still park in that area, and sometimes it's because it's a white line that looks just like a parking space. So I just want to make sure that when we do that, we have that discussion, and maybe we have it at subcommittee, but I appreciate the fact that we've got this grant, and I would just like to do the crosswalks in a more visible way than we have in the past.
That's part of this signage, is to get that signage up there delineating where the no parking is for the pedestrian crosswalks, to keep that, I think it's a 22-foot distance from the crosswalks on either side.
Thank you, Steve.
Welcome. The RAISE grant, we've talked about this before. Alex Pelczar from Senator Collins' office, she was made aware of the city's pending $18 million application, and the Senator's office immediately reached out wanting to have a scoping meeting with us. That will take place tomorrow on January 19th to discuss the downtown scope of works, seeking the Senator's support of the application later this year. City's partnership with the Maine Department of Transportation under the Planning Partnership Initiative will be the basis, as well as the 2 other municipal partnership initiatives, MPIs, including Cottage and Winter Street, in the combined scope. We're further seeking a partnership to fill out from the $18 million that's currently programmed in there, to make that up to the $25 million, which is the maximum amount under the RAISE grant, by partnering with both the water and the sewer departments to have improvements done in those impacted areas at the same time. So Senator Collins' office is extremely excited about scoping this project with us and lending her support into this initiative. And then the last thing, the Department of Transportation is, Director Hill sat with Stephen Landry today. Well, everything's a Zoom meeting now, right? Met with the Maine Department of Transportation on a business partnership initiative, a BPI. We have not done a BPI before. We've been seeking to do a BPI. And that is in relationship to the pending redevelopment of the Nassau dorms up in Springvale. So the BPI is a funding mechanism whereby it's a third. So Maine Department of Transportation, a third by the city, and a third by the private development, to accomplish transportation improvements associated with new development or redevelopment, thereby maximizing state, local, and private investments to achieve the city's objectives of transportation improvements as well as market rate housing as being the focus of this pending application. I've not had a chance to debrief with Director Hill yet as to what the outcome of that was. I feel, and I know Matt did going into it, it may be a stretch, but nonetheless, we wanted to continue that working relationship with MDOT and seek leveraged funding as may be appropriate. The next thing on my list is the OSHA Emergency Technical Standard, the COVID-19 mask and test. On the 13th of January, so last week, the Supreme Court placed a stay on the OSHA ETS mandating either vaccinations or a mask and test regimen of unvaccinated employees for any employer over 100 employees. The ruling was a 6-3 split decision. So I won't go into the full 30-page document at this point in time, but I extracted out what I thought were the most relevant pieces in there because some of it pertains to the positive action that I anticipate the council will take later this evening. They stated of the COVID-19 vaccination and testing, the emergency temporary standard, as referenced, is stayed pending disposition of the applicant's petitions for review in the United States Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit and disposition of the applicant's petitions for writs of, I'm trying to pronounce this correctly again, Chatoria. If such writs are timely sought, should the petitions of writs of certoria be denied, this order shall terminate automatically. In the event that petitions for the writ of certoria are granted, the order shall terminate upon the sending down of the judgment. So they stayed the execution of that, and it will be waiting for the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeal. I think the pertinent points out of that 30-page document is that, in summary, although Congress has indisputably given OSHA the power to regulate occupational dangers, it has not given that agency the power to regulate public health more broadly, requiring the vaccination of 84 million Americans selected simply because they work for employers with more than 100 employees, certainly falls in the latter category. So I won't go into read all of this, the remainder of this, but they've stated explicitly that the question then is whether the Act plainly authorizes the securities mandate, and they stated it does not, and they give the reasonings as to why. I did note, though, the Council is going to act on a masking policy, a temporary emergency masking policy tonight, and I did extract this out of there. It says, that is not to say OSHA lacks authority to regulate occupational specific risk related to COVID-19, where the virus poses a special danger because of the particular features of an employee's job or workplace. Targeted regulations are plainly permissible. So I thought that spoke plainly to the emergency temporary masking ordinance that the Council is considering this evening, because it does go to that targeted regulation, and it is plainly permissible. So I'll leave that alone, and I've put a link in here if anybody wants to read that decision.
Steve, can I ask a question about that?
Okay.
Yes. That's good. I just wanted to know, I noticed that a lot of companies are going ahead, even though they weren't covered under this, they're still going to mandate if someone isn't vaccinated, they're going to test their employees, or they're establishing policies to do that. There's nothing to say that we can't do that, correct?
That is correct, but I seek the guidance under the Supreme Court decision as far as the authority of regulating a workplace element as opposed to that matter of public safety, public health.
Correct. And so we will discuss that in the future?
I will continue to share our observations that our greatest ability to deal with the COVID impacts right now is the accurate and timely reporting of the employee base to us as an employer, and the timely testing of close contacts and other related cases has been really the best means for us to address the impacts. If you're simply pool testing, i.e. only those unvaccinated individuals, knowing that the new guidance now is that you're most infectious in the 2 days prior or the 3 days after the symptoms are incurred. That 7-day window does nothing to address that. It's really about when you become symptomatic, and in the main CDC's information that I received today during the York County Emergency Management updates, they've taken that pre-testing standard completely off the table as being ineffectual, that it's all about testing when somebody becomes symptomatic, because the system has become so overwhelmed in pre-testing and that they're reserving that for the post-testing for affirmation. So I know we dealt with several employees coming off the weekend, one of which was symptomatic. And the test proved that the person was not COVID, that it was something other than that, but it was not COVID. So again, for us, we've been reliant upon the employees' timely and educated response back to us as employers, and then doing the testing associated.
And we will still be doing that, correct?
Can I just point out
Absolutely.
there's a lot.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
There's a lot of people testing negative for COVID, and then it takes a lot further into the illness before they're testing positive. I don't know why that's happening. I just think the best thing we can do now is the masking until this whole peak of Omicron crashes. I think
we will
the
discuss
testing
that
is
down the road.
problematic, because I think the timing of testing is so difficult to figure out, that I actually think the best thing we can do is to deal with the masking and just get through it at this point.
Does anybody else on the council have any other questions of the city manager's report?
Oh, I had another item in here.
Oh, you did. Go ahead, Steve. I'm sorry. I forgot.
I hope you find humor in this as I do. So Atlantic Broadband has provided us notice that they're becoming Breeze Line. Received the notice on the 10th of January. They stated, in addition to this rebranding, the operating legal entity names shall be changing from Atlantic Broadband Finance LLC to Congico US Finance LLC, quote, in an effort to better align with our partner company, Congico. They further noted that, quote, neither of these changes involve a change in ownership, control, or a transfer of the company, nor does it impact our existing agreement and services. It therefore requires no action on your part. However, please note that the address for the legal notices have changed. They also stated one of the new initiatives is the company will also launch BreezeLine Stream TV, a cloud-based, web-powered video experience allowing customers to access live and recorded programs on every compatible device in and outside of the home. I've put a link in here where you can find out more on the coming rebranding of Atlantic Broadband to BreezeLine. I did note this, and I sent this on to the city's legal counsel, because as you know, the city's legal counsel on this matter of the inability for individuals to provide multi-channel cable TV Tier 1 access without purchasing internet is in question here. That demand letter was sent by certified mail on the 2nd and received by Atlantic Broadband on the 3rd. They have 60 days to respond to that. That comes due approximately February 2nd. Provided this information to our attorney and noted on the elements of the unbundled basic tier offering that I found it coincidental that you currently cannot buy multi-channel cable TV in the city without buying internet, yet the company is now going to launch BreezeLine Stream TV, where you get your multi-channel TV program via the internet. Interesting. The last thing is sidewalks. Director Hill asked me to give this to the City Council this evening. The storm that started at 3 a.m. on Monday morning, heavy snows, and then shifted rapidly to freezing rain and then to rain, incurring frozen packed snow on our streets. The crews kept on the roads for the entire duration of the event and into the late evening hours. The department did not have the manpower to address the sidewalks at the same time as clearing the streets and focused on the streets. Quick freeze overnight left the sidewalks in a frozen mess, emphasis on as a mess. Crews concentrated yet again today on treating and clearing streets of black ice. Crews will concentrate tomorrow as much as possible on Wednesday, given the rise in temperatures, to begin clearing the sidewalks and again treating with salt and magnesium chloride. I wanted to pass that on. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I think we all appreciate the fact that that was a horrible storm for a lot of people. And so, you know, I hope that they are able to get some salt down so that the sidewalks will be a little bit clearer so that kids can walk to school, because I do think, but it's just basically everybody who has a driveway, unless you were able to go out and somehow get rid of all that water, has ice on it. Okay, communications and presentations, 22-19-01, quarterly report and presentation from the Director of Stanford Regional Economic Growth Council. I will turn this over to Jim, and unless he has some visuals, we may as well just show everybody up there. I didn't know what his plan was this evening.
There should be a few slides.
Okay, then we'll screen share. Who's going to do that? Steve?
Jim, do you have the slides available? I don't have those here in the packet.
You don't?
They're on the M drive, Steve.
Thank you, Larissa.
All right, I'll grab them then. Give me just a moment.
So I am looking at calendar 21, the fourth quarter. So a little bit of a look back as we enter January of 22.
And I've got it loading, just a moment. There, how's that?
Thank you. So the first slide really, well, I want to look at two things tonight, really. One is the board of directors, which took up a lot of our time and our attention, positively so in 2021, as well as some of the small business activities that we've been undertaking during that calendar year as well. So the first note I want to make, for the public is really that this board of directors that's historically included members on our Growth Council, really the founders of the Growth Council, including the city, as well as the Industrial Development Corporation. And really a lot of what 2021 was about was organizing ourselves, the two founders working together and coming up with a couple of things. The new MOU, which sort of laid out the guidelines for the two groups to operate the Growth Council, including expanding the board representation. So we went from 7 to 11 directors. And within those new directors, we also had representation from a small business as well as a large employer. And so some of the sectors that were brought together during the crafting of that MOU, including building development, business support, finance and banking, housing development, as well as workforce development and higher education. So the next slide, I just wanted to let you know that we've gone through this process. We have, in fact, brought a full board together for the first time. We met, I believe, all of us in December. And so you can see on this slide that effective as of this morning, when we voted in this first slate of officers for the period January through June of 2022, you can see that Steve Buck has stepped up to chair us during that 6-month period. Will Armitage is serving as vice chair. He has indicated to the group that he's willing to be nominated and served in July when we switch officers. And secretary and treasurers remain, again, for the 6-month period, the president and vice president of the IDC, Bob Hardison, Mike Ralston. And then if you look at the rest of of our roster, you can see, looking at their names and where they come from, how they represent the different factions within the board. Diane Gary with housing, Caitlin Grant with YCCC. Ann Hanselman has been designated by the mayor, so representing the city, and this is her business position. Ann Lancaster with the Small Business Development Centers. Rob Rankin is president of Rancorp, a local developer. Gina Sautel was the city's nominee selection to represent small business. She runs Above and Beyond Catering, I think, as most people know. as well as Bob Sullivan, who's the ops director for Rome America, brought to us, nominated by the IDC and brought forward to the board. So again, full slate of talent. I think Steve Buck and I, part of our challenge, I think in early 22, and we started this conversation with the full board this morning, was we want to continue interaction. We've got a lot of talent around the table or around the Zoom. And, you know, our challenge is to make sure two things, I think, really. One is that we provide regular ongoing training, education, information. There's a lot of programs out there. There's a lot of acronyms out there, as well as, you know, reach out topically to get the feedback and the expert advice from the group that we've assembled. So again, really pleased to have everybody on board and look forward to a real successful time with this board of directors. And the next slide, the other really focus point for us tonight is around small business. And again, some out there may or may not know, but we brought forward a small business advocate within the Growth Council beginning in July of last year. Mary Hastings is in that position. You can see her contact information. I also want you to know that one of her first tasks as a small business advocate was we had started and stopped a couple of times with small business guides, the how-to, a guide to doing business in Sanford Springfield. And one of her tasks was to get back at it. And she spent a lot of time looking at what other communities were doing. She spent a lot of time with our planning and permitting staff, again, to sort of lay out drafts and talk through how business is done. You can see the link right there. If you click on that, it will take you to a small business guide. Within that guide, again, we've test-driven that guide with old developers, new developers, different businesses, some members of the, really all members of the Growth Council. But we got a lot of positive feedback about that. One individual that had gone through a difficult process maybe half dozen years ago kind of said, smiling, you know, would have loved to have had this thing a few years ago. So anyways, long story short, we have this guide assembled. It really does, it's out there for any new or expanding business. Our goal really is to help navigate. You know, we've talked in the past as a Growth Council, as a City Council, about the fact that, you know, these are not all large companies that come equipped with their lawyers and their accountants and their architects. And this is really an attempt to walk pretty much any company that's either starting up or expanding, get to know who the stakeholders are. We open up that guide by talking about a lot of the good things that are going on in our community. It's sort of an elevator talk if you want to tear it out and carry it in your pocket in terms of a lot of the positive things happening. It really does take you through what's the Growth Council. It introduces you to Mary Hastings as a small business advocate, and then literally takes you through each of the key departments that have a function in this process. There are a number of like a matrix setup. So in terms of your business licensing needs, both locally with our clerk's office, as well as the state's link is there for their business licensing process. We've got resources identified there, some of the critical ones that we spend time with on a regular basis around TIF and pine tree zones, and some of the funding sources that are available, including some of our own regional folks that, again, do business with Sanford companies, Springfield companies, would love to do more. So we've attempted under one document to have a lot of answers for people. And, you know, please note as you look through it, at the bottom of every page, there is contact information for the small business advocate. So it basically says, even as you're going through this page, if you have questions about something doesn't make any sense, you have a contact section at the end of each of the pages in this document. And just as a note to the public, on our website, if you scroll down any of the pages on sanfordgrowth.com, you'll also find a contact sheet at the end of each page. So again, any information either that you found, don't understand, or have not found, you're welcome to enter that contact information and we'll get back to you quickly. But just again, this is sort of a public service announcement. There is this guide available. There's information available. Please use it. And again, any questions, please reach out to us at the Growth Council. And the last item there is really, we've talked a little bit about this process that we've been through, and it took up most of 2021. We started out with extensive surveying of the broadband uses within the community, both residential, small business, large business. We then moved on to what we pretty much would call a digital literacy initiative. And so the small business growth program has been a digital program for us. We have reached out to our focus point, our targeted customers, if you will, have been the near fiber companies that are within a pole or two of the Stanford net fiber trunk. And so reached out to these companies, identified these companies, and then did a pilot program using a targeted sample from that group. We've got just shy of 20 that have self-enrolled, gone through a digital review process, have done an e-business checkup, and have had scorecards generated for each of them. And so it's really an attempt to look at some of the key items that businesses use online, whether it's e-commerce, around the buying and the selling and the website information, to e-process. You know, we all do banking, whether you're going to telework. Does your staff need any sort of training? So these things were all tabulated, scorecards generated for each of these participating companies. And again, the top 3 e-solutions were prepared for each company. We're now in the process of sitting with, we'll do a demonstration with the first 3 people that we know, and again, check the information that's been generated, look at the resources available to help those companies, and then move on to the balance of those that have participated. At the end of all this, a report is due. If you recall, we received grant monies from the Department of Economic and Community Development, both through their Connect Me Authority, as well as the Community Development Office. And so we're wrapping up these interviews by the end of this month, and then move on to summarizing the survey and the digital literacy work and get that to the state by middle of February. So again, it's been an interesting experience. I'd love to tell you that, you know, everybody's doing exceptionally well and at the top of their games. But what we learned a lot through the survey process and through this literacy checkup is that there's a lot of information that needs to be understood both by companies, by their employees. And I think we've made, you know, good strides into launching this initiative. We've got a long way to go as well. But again, I want you to know, and the public to know, that there's been a small business focus, and that'll continue to be part of our work going into 2022, into this calendar year, as well as, you know, the usual suspects, the work that we do in terms of some of the larger companies, et cetera. So with that, I'll conclude my quarterly report and ask if there's any questions at this time.
Thank you, Jim. Are there any questions from counselors? Okay, I don't see any hands up, so thank you very much, Jim.
You're very welcome. Thank you all.
Next item is public participation for items that are not on this evening's agenda. I'm looking for hands. I know that Diane Connolly requested to speak under public comment. So Diane, you may speak first. Just make sure you identify yourself and tell us where you live.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. This is Diane Connolly. I'm a resident of Springvale. I've brought this up before. I'm going to bring it up again. While I find that the city is business friendly, it doesn't include trucks with gross registered vehicle weights over 30 to 60,000 pounds plus, using newly paved arterial roads that the taxpayers voted on and are paying through with a 5-year bond. We have moratoriums on roads to protect them, but yet this investment doesn't protect our roads by letting large trucks, heavy-weighted trucks, go down and up these roads, especially the newly paved ones, like Blanchard, Mount Hope, Railroad Avenue, etc. These roads were not given good basis for these weights with the money that we have to spend. But, you know, we protect our houses. We try and do our best to sustain them, but yet we don't see the same results with the newly paved roads. I'm not harping on any company that have to use these roads, but put a permit-based system in and let them pay to use the roads. You talk about having revenue for the city. Well, that's another way of doing it. Let them use them, but they have to pay to use them. My other point is, you know, Matt Hill posts the roads in the springs when they're soft. Can he not, with council, come up with truck routes, roads that are acceptable for to be used with these trucks? On another note, Madam Mayor, I hope you enjoyed your special day today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. Okay, I don't see anybody else under public comment, so if I'm missing something, Larissa, I think I will go on then. Public hearings, there are none. Consent agenda, 22-20-01. The consent agenda is approved, being no objection. Old business, there is none. New business, 22-3-01. Order to see if the City Council will vote to appropriate $2,242,786.27 from Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Funds, also known as the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA funds, received by the city from the federal government. I'm going to have Steve present it, and then I'll ask for a motion to approve.
Okay, so in your packet this evening, you have the following cut sheet. This stemmed from the Council's last review and consensus direction. Administration then went back and constructed a worksheet based upon that consensus, and it contains the following items as a balanced approach. It includes improvements for the ventilation system here in City Hall. That would be the clerk's area at $17,840. It includes the ventilation improvements for the City Council chambers in the amount of $15,650. It approves $275,000 for the use over the next 3 fiscal years. To institute a substance misuse treatment, a social worker / community outreach worker to be employed by and be part of the city's police department. It has the rehire from 20 authorized positions to 22 authorized positions for the dispatch center. That's over the next 3 fiscal cycles. Total amount of $449,075. It includes high quality affordable housing in the amount of a one-time grant to the land bank in the amount of $300,000, which is viewed to be a revolving loan fund whereby it would construct up to 2 living units per $300,000 unit, for which that would then be sold to a qualified individual or individuals, and that money recouped, and that funds would be utilized on an ongoing basis. And that was to cover high quality urban infill in those areas that have been addressed by the land bank that are now coming under potential redevelopment. Since once the properties have been remediated, some of those properties are going to come on to the city's portfolio for redevelopment, and or this would go towards funding for the ongoing partnerships of the Stanford Housing Authority that's done rehabilitation, as well as Habitat for Humanity that's done new construction on these types of lots. There is an amount of $200,000 in there for broadband to underserved and unserved businesses within the community. The $200,000 is slated for making near fiber connections along the city's pre-existing Stanford Net route, and that would be to the 300 plus businesses that are within a near fiber connection to Stanford Net fiber. So much of the work that the Growth Council is doing now on digital literacy for Stanford small businesses would give them the opportunity to connect to a business-specific broadband network once they learn more about the advantages that such connections bring to them. Also, the City Council wanted to fund the remaining improvements rather than take it out of capital improvements. It does qualify under ARPA funds for the Benton Park playground improvements that are, Carpentier Park playground improvements that are scheduled for this year. That is a capital project that's ongoing, and in there we received land and water conservation funds towards much of that project cost. The remaining match of $95,167 would have been in the CIP, but the council has found the ability to fund it here under the ARPA funds. So this will be a direct reduction on the budget for this year. Also under the disproportionately impacted populations and communities section of the ARPA funds, council has under consideration here the use of $585,000 worth of these resources to purchase the first of two lots for potential construction of the fire stations going forward in the future. Also under training, there is a three 6 months training opportunities in the total amount of $90,360 to be spread over the next 3 fiscal years. That will be used specifically to train dispatchers within the Stanford Regional Dispatch Center that are starting from scratch. Individuals that are not certified that are starting from scratch. That is about a 6-month period to train such individuals. It's an extensive training project. I don't think the general public has knowledge of the extensive amount of training that goes into people becoming a dispatcher, especially as it pertains to electronic protocols for both police and fire dispatching in today's world. There's also 8 weeks of training in there for up to 3 units of dispatchers that would come to the organization that are previously certified dispatchers within the state of Maine, but have to come and get training specific to dispatching within our regional dispatch center in order to clear and be able to dispatch on their own. There's also paramedic training in here for tuition and backfill coverage and to cover the clinical hours to train 2 EMTs or advanced EMTs up to the paramedic level over the next 3 fiscal cycles. Then the last element in here is $81,600 for academy training for 2 non-certified police officers to go through academy training. This will help the departments extensively over the next number of years, given the number of retirements that we have currently within our system. This list, as was previously scoped and moved forward by consensus by the City Council, amounts to $2,240,026. It is within $2,760 of your maximum amount of award anticipated at $2,240,026. Excuse me, $2,242,786. Did a further breakdown for the City Council. They wanted to know how these funds will be utilized. This is for the first year breakdown. So from that list that I showed you just a moment ago, the first year implementation of that, which is 65.36%, amounts to $1,465,944. $110,000 in the first year again would go to enhanced services. That's the new outreach worker in the police department. $179,630 is historical services, but it's a return of the 2 dispatch positions that were cut 2 years ago. So it returns the dispatch back to the fairly authorized 22 positions as opposed to the 20. So I put that under the category of increased services, as I did the social worker. So in the first year implementation, there's $289,630 of increased services that will come from the ARPA and be provided to the public. The $300,000 is termed as a new investment. That goes to the housing aspects, as I spoke to earlier, and I put that under the category of public infrastructure investments. You have $200,000 allocation for the continued expansion of broadband, $50,000 of which will be used in the first year. I put that also under infrastructure investments. There is the funding of $95,167 for the Carpentier Park improvements, which includes a playground, splash pad, and other surface treatments there for that park, and new fencing as well. I put that under the budget reductions category because that would have been, it was programmed in the CIP. It now will be paid for under ARPA funds as opposed to general taxation. The disproportionately impacted populations, that is the purchase of the property for the future construction of one of two new fire stations for the city in the amount of $585,000. I put that under the infrastructure and investment. So those three elements total $935,000 of new public infrastructure and investments out of that first year funding. Training costs, the first year implementation of that is $45,180. We'll be able to take those training costs out of the dispatch budget in this year's budget development. $10,000 offset for training for a certified officer. Again, we can take that out of this year's budget as currently proposed. Backfilling the historical clinical coverage hours at 50,167. So that's for one paramedic training. We'll take that out of the budget for this year's under the fire department. And the academy training at $40,800 for one officer, we can take that out and fund it under ARPA as well. So there'd be a direct impact to this year's budget of $241,314 to offset budget elements that would have previously been incurred out of general taxation that would be paid for out of the proposed use of the ARPA funding. Any questions on those that composition?
Nope. I'm gonna, unless you have something else to add, Steve, I'm gonna ask for a motion and then the council can discuss. Do I have a motion to approve as presented?
Move we approve.
Motion by Councilor Stackpole. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Deputy Mayor Herlihy. Okay, council discussion. Anybody have any questions? I see Councilor Hanselman's hand up. Go right ahead, Councilor.
Thank you. I really appreciate the breakdown, especially the second page, Steve. In terms of the broadband to underserved, I just want to make sure I understand, having talked about that at workshop, is that still earmarked, or is it thinking still that a good portion of that would go towards the infrastructure of broadband in the Midtown Mall specific area, or are we really looking at that 300 plus? We had that conversation about of trying to bring that into Midtown Mall. Can you provide clarification on that?
Yes. So originally, the full $200,000 was conceptually, administration conceived that would only go to the connection of the near fiber businesses. So those average about $1,500 per connection. Some of those will be a little higher because the complexity of reaching them and or maybe more than one pole. Some of those would be less expensive, but the average is $1,500 per. And you have the ongoing digital literacy elements with those businesses. Also, we have a quote of about $140,000 to make that connectivity in the downtown district, the Midtown Mall area, which currently is a fiber it is currently a fiber desert. Because of the underground utilities that were there at the time the city went to construct Stanford Net Fiber, when we applied for access to the then Fairpoint, now Consolidated Communications conduits that run under the streets with the telecommunications elements, we were denied access to those for two reasons. A, they felt that the capacity wasn't there, the space wasn't there, and the conduits, and B, there was a recognition that the conduits are failing and or have failed. They're full of water the predominance of the year and such, and that infrastructure needs to be replaced. So we had to route out around that entire district to each side of it. So we've had extreme difficulty in finding a viable route back in there. So the route would be up Riverside, up St. Ignatius, on the pre-existing poles because we're allowed to attach to those. We would then go from the last pole on St. Ignatius Street, drop down the pole, come underneath the parking lot in order to get to all of the facilities and for the first time be able to serve that with fiber in this district. Director Halsey believes that he's found the ability to possibly fund that through the CDBG grant program and or other ancillary elements. If that is the case, we won't have to use that sum of money just to get to the Midtown Mall area businesses in the heart of our downtown, but we can save that for the near fiber connections.
Thank you. I have one other question, if that's okay. I just want to make sure in my notes I have this correct, and I didn't hear Steve on the training aspect for experienced dispatchers. Just so I have my notes correct, is that a one fiscal year or fiscal year expenditure, or is that over 3 years as well?
No, we have that spread over the 3 fiscal years as well. That's a constant and ongoing need in that department. There's a fair amount of turnover there, substantial amount of turnover there, dispatcher burnout. Some people just decide that career is not for them after 3 to 5 years, if they make it that long. It's a stressful job.
And then just in closing for me, I think what's important to mention, one, that we did discuss this at length in workshops, but also that although, Steve, you've laid out direct budget reductions of things that are in our ongoing annual budgets, it's realistic and reasonable that there'll be an investment in fire station land, as well as investment in substance abuse programs that the council has formed some consensus around supporting, and we've recognized a need to increase dispatch. So even though you don't have those things in the direct budget reduction column, there is a reasonable argument that at some point those things would hit our regular operating budget. Would you agree with that statement?
I would agree, especially on the social worker and such, as we try to address recidivism, excuse me, not only within the police department and the clients that they deal with, but also within the fire department and the clients that they deal with that are call for multiple services simply because their needs haven't been addressed otherwise. So that should produce positive impacts on us from a budgetary perspective in the future, but we can't put a fine line analysis as to what that dollar amount would be. I would like to note at this juncture as well that by the council making this commitment at this point in time, it gives us direction into those elements that we will incorporate into the pending fiscal 22-23 budget that we need to know timely. But the other element is I want the council to know that they have the ability to amend this going forward in the future. And the perspective I'm speaking of is there are significant broadband elements coming forward. We have a meeting the third week in February with Connectivity Maine as to how those funding might flow into the city of Stanford. And there's also the pending opioid settlement funds that are coming. Those could allow you to draw from those other pools of funds and then reallocate these ARPA funds to other areas that are still unaddressed at that point in time. So I want to ensure the council you retain that flexibility going forward up until December 31st of 2024, at which time the last of these ARPA funds have to be allocated and appropriated. Even if the project isn't completed at that point in time, they simply have to be earmarked as to where they're going to be spent. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions, Councillor Hanselman?
No.
Any other questions from any councillors? I don't see any questions. So we have a motion and a second on the table. Steve, can I just see everybody so I can make sure nobody has their hand up? Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table. Seeing no more discussion, I will call the roll. Councillor Brink?
Yes.
Councillor Martel?
He looks frozen.
Councillor Martel?
He does look frozen, Emery.
Oh, he is frozen.
Yeah.
It's not me, right? Okay, then I'll wait till he gets back on. Councillor Hanselman?
Yes.
Councillor Stackpole?
Yes.
I will go out there right now and pick one up. Like,
Deputy Mayor Herlihy?
Yes.
And I am also a yes. I'm going to
Awesome.
wait till Councillor Martel gets back on and just finish the vote. Everyone's okay with that?
I think he's going to have to sign back in. He just disappeared, Emery.
Okay, then I will, is it okay, Steve, if I, just let me give him a minute. I'll see if he can get back on. I'd rather just.
He's been
complete the
frozen
vote
for
and make
quite
it
some
official.
time.
Has he?
Probably been about 5 minutes that Jonathan's been frozen.
Okay.
Can remind other people to please mute their computers.
And thanks for all the questions, Anne. You
Yeah,
did
they
such
were
a good
perfect.
job for us.
Let's see if he's trying to get back on.
I'll text him and just make sure.
That he's trying.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is. He's at the very end here.
He is.
I can see his name.
Yeah.
Well, while we're waiting, we not talk about the Patriots game Saturday night, like ever again.
And why'd you bring it up?
Yeah. I
Because
heard
it
word
continues
that
to bother me.
isn't there a team that got slaughtered last night that wasn't expected to get slaughtered? That's what I heard. These are from people who watch football. So.
I don't see him back on. Do you?
No, not yet.
He's trying.
Oh,
I see his name.
Where
His
do you see
name.
his name? I don't even see his name.
You have to go to
We got
page 2.
duplicate names for Jonathan
Looks
right
like
now.
You might be trying to call in Anne.
There he
Oh, there
is.
he is. I see you, Jonathan. Okay, I'm just going to ask you for your yes or no on the motion on the table, which was about the ARPA funds. I called the roll. Can you hear me?
John,
I think
John.
I can hear you, Jonathan.
Settings.
Oh, I guess not. Okay, I'll let him vote after the fact. Okay, but it's unanimous of all those present. So I will go on to the next item till he gets himself straightened out there. So 22-33-01, order to authorize the Stanford Fire Department to distribute, deliver, and install battery-operated or plug-in smoke, carbon monoxide, or combination smoke and carbon monoxide detectors at residential premises, and to keep a record of such installations for a period of 5 years after installation pursuant to Title 14 MRSA Section 173. Is Chief Bonatti going to present on this, Steve?
Yes, I would ask the chief to present and give a description of what the program has been in the past, and then either he or I can explain the recent law that was passed and how this the council's authorization of this program this evening would relieve the city and or the fire department of liability going forward. Chief?
Okay, so we'll have the presentation first, and then we'll ask for a motion. So go ahead, Chief Bonatti.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. I come before you tonight to ask for your approval of the smoke detector and carbon monoxide program that the City of Stanford has. We have run this program for, I believe, over 15 years. It was in operation prior to my arrival some 10 years ago. It came about from a person who started the project with a financial donation to the city after losing a family member in a fire where smoke detectors were not present. The reason I come before you tonight is to, things have changed at the legislative level where now it is a state law that it requires the council's approval for us to continue to do the program we have done. And that program has been that we will provide and install smoke detector or carbon monoxide detectors for anybody who cannot afford them in the city or where need is such. We have also used them in places where we happen to be on a medical call. We realize there's no protection in the person's home. Usually that's an elderly person's home or something that doesn't have the means to do this sort of thing. We don't leave that residence without making sure that they have proper smoke detectors in place. Again, these are at no cost to the resident. This is not a program where we install them in people's houses just to install them for those who can afford them. This is for the people who cannot. And we look forward to continuing this program because we do believe that it makes our community much safer, both in the carbon monoxide world as well as the smoke detectors, because both of those truly do protect lives within our city. So right now, the state law, which changed January 1st, requires the city's approval. That then gives the fire department protection from legal kickback, reference to either injury or damage that we may or may not occur in the course of our installation, or that which, if there is a smoke detector present that we installed, the city then now accepts the liability and respect and the protection for that aspect. It's a great program. We've had great results. We really want to continue the program. It is all self-funding. It has not cost the city anything for any of these detectors of which we get. And the person who started it periodically stops by and asks if we need more money or more detectors, and gladly provides that for us. And we have also had recent delivery of cases of detectors from another state where they cannot no longer use that particular type of detector, one of which the state of Maine still allows. So we were able to benefit from that as well. So glad to answer any questions.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Councilor Hanselman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Deputy Mayor Hurley.
Sounds good.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion by the council?
Can I ask the chief a question?
You may. Go ahead, Deputy
You
Mayor.
happen to know what kind of smoke detectors failed in Philadelphia? Wasn't it a smoke detector fail?
No, there were, my understanding from what I've heard and seen in print is that the smoke detectors were inoperative, not that they failed, but they were inoperative, which usually means either A, if they were hardwired, they were disabled or shut off, or if they were battery detectors, they were not up to par and either had dead batteries in them. And,
so it might have been tenant interference.
Yeah, it often happens because the tenants will either take the batteries out of them or they get tired of hearing them go off when they're smoking or something going on. So they hurt themselves in that respect a lot of the time. And only the aspect of regular inspections and proper code enforcement are they able to catch that sort of thing. So sometimes people are their own worst enemy.
I'm sorry to do this in the middle, but I just heard it was the new 10-year battery life, and we've been switching to those over here. And I was just curious if there was a failure in the new product. So.
Oh, and it's also, those products have been working very well, but that's one of the reasons why we are required to keep a record so that we know when we put them in how old they are. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. Any other questions by any other councilors? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Councilor Brink.
Yes.
Councilor Martell, I think he's having difficulty getting back on, so I'm going to just skip him unless I missed him on here, and I don't see him, so I will continue. Councilor Hanselman.
Yes.
Councilor Stackpole.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herlihy.
Yes.
And I am also a yes. That is unanimous of all those present. Okay, 22-4-01, ordered to approve the proposed 2022-2023 budget review schedule and format, which shall govern the Budget Committee's work per Section 602.2 of the Stanford City Charter. Steve, do you want to present this first, and then we will ask for a motion?
Well, so the budget calendar that's proposed, that's in there, is put forward by our finance director. It is the same type of scheduling that we've had in the past. You will note that through the month of January, the finance director and myself sit individually with each of the departments. We go through line by line in a zero-based budgeting process to build the budget back up from their departmental request to what I will bring forward as far as the manager's budget for further consideration. We've asked them to work diligently this year as far as the budgets. Anything that are outside of the realm of current operations, they're keeping a list of that, and we have that set aside on the side for further consideration by the City Council as well as the Budget Committee going forward. So the calendar goes through in January. You might want to tell our finance director she's pushing too hard because there's no time to eat in this calendar. So I have a refrigerator full of frozen meals here. But anyways, just saying. Let's see. February, we have a workshop scheduled for the City Council, whereby the City Council can give further input into it to us administratively before it starts with the Budget Committee starting on March 3rd. The Budget Committee will meet on the 3rd, the 10th, the 17th, 24th, and 31st of March to complete their work, and then make a recommendation to the City Council at the April 5th meeting. And then the City Clerk must publish that by April 15th, 60 days prior to the election. Then April 29th, we'll publish that in the newspapers as far as the action, which will be taken on May 17th. We'll hold a public hearing at least 10 days before. And then the budget validation process that still must go on for the school department will be held on Tuesday, June 14th. And I will note that this is I think it's every third year, but this is the year whereby the residents will be asked yet again as to whether they wish to continue the school budget validation process. That will be in conjunction with their referendum vote on the school budget again this year.
Thank you, Steve. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilor Stackpole. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Brink.
Just a quick
Any
question.
discussion by the council?
Yeah, just a quick question. Steve, are the number of meetings for the Budget Committee the same? I think there was 6. Is that right?
I believe so. Councilor Stackpole, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5. There's 5 meetings there. Complete the work, and then the April 5th would be the 6th as far as presentation is concerned.
Okay.
Councilor Hanselman, I see your hand up.
I had one more follow-up.
Oh, you did have another question, Councilor Stackpole?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And so that gives us a gap, correct? The Budget Committee, a gap where we can hear everything. We can have one night to deliberate, of course, publicly, and attempt to make adjustments, and then come back for a final meeting if needed. I think that was
Correct.
the process we followed last year. I mean,
Correct.
okay, that's only I keep having it in my mind that we eliminated a meeting one year, and I think that messed us up. But last year was fine, so if it's the same as last year, I'm okay.
Councilor Hanselman?
Well, mine's more commentary in nature. I was going to remind everybody that the March 17th meeting is typically one where we try to be in attendance as a public hearing, but I noticed it's also St. Patrick's Day. So we'll see what attendance looks like at a public hearing for the budget on St. Patty's Day.
Oh, that's right. Jeez.
Yep. Could be interesting.
Green beer for everybody.
No.
We're not allowed beer in City Hall. Fake beer.
Okay. Any other discussion by councilors? Seeing none, I'm going to call the roll. We do have a motion on the table, right? Councilor Brink?
Yes.
Counselor Martell is still not able to get on. Counselor Hanselman?
Yes.
Counselor Stackpole?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herlihy?
Yes.
I am also a yes. That is unanimous of all those present.
Should council, I mean, if he's watching, Counselor Martell
He
could
said,
just call in.
it doesn't really, these don't matter. The one that he listened to, here's what he's saying right now. I just got a message. He's lost his internet and he's going to try to get back on if it comes in again. So
He can
he's
call
off.
in.
So we're going to count him as I suggested that, but he can, I would just as soon, because we are supposed to vote with our video.
Yeah.
And I just am, I want to make sure that we adhere to that. So I'm going to just say that he's absent with, and he's excused with notice. So if he's able to get his internet back on and he gets back on, that's fine. Otherwise, we're just going to continue, and he's fine with that. So 22-5-01, order to accept and approve the city financial reports for the second quarter of fiscal year 21-22. I'm going to ask for a motion to table. We're going to take this up at our next meeting. Finance director was not able to be here this evening. So do I have a motion to table, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Brink. Is there a second?
I think Bob had seconded, but second.
Yeah, I got
didn't
my
hear
second
it.
in there. Yeah.
Okay, you did second it?
I did.
So a second by Councilor Stackpole. We have a motion and a second. There's no discussion on a tabling motion, so I will call the roll. Councilor Brink?
Yes.
Councilor Hanselman?
Yes.
Councilor Stackpole?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herlihy?
Yes.
And I am also a yes. That is unanimous of all those present. 22-1-01, order to make appointments to the Budget Committee for 2022 pursuant to Section 602.2 of the Stanford City Charter. Let me just, Steve, do you have those members up there, that memo?
I do.
I just would like to just say who the recommendations are to the council, that Wesley Davey, Lindsay Quinn, Melissa Alapalo, and Amy Garneau are the citizens who are being appointed this evening to the Budget Committee. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Herlihy, second by Councilor Stackpole. Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Then I will call the roll. Councilor Brink?
Yes.
Councilor Martell still not here. Councilor Hanselman?
Yes.
Councilor Stackpole?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herlihy?
Yes.
And I am also a yes. That is unanimous of all those present. 22-24-01, order to review and vote on adoption of a draft emergency temporary policy for masking in municipal facilities. First, I'll ask Steve to present it. Then I'll ask for a motion and a second, and then we'll have discussion, including comments from the public if there are any people here that want to discuss it, want to comment. So go ahead, Steve. The floor is yours.
Okay, I'm going to bring the policy up itself because it's relatively brief. I kept it as succinct as possible. Statement of purpose is whereas the rate of community spread of COVID-19, especially the Omicron variant, is at a record high, that still stands true. Whereas the city remains diligent in all efforts to prevent the infection and spread of the COVID-19 virus as the best means to protect the public and employees. Whereas masking of all public and employees in the city when indoors in the public setting of municipal facilities considered areas of substantial or high transmission potential will provide additional protection against the spread of COVID-19 virus. Now, therefore, the City Council is hereby adopting an emergency temporary policy for the masking of all members of the public and employees of the city as a condition to enter into the public setting of any and all municipal facilities as so noticed. The emergency temporary policy, it should be the policy of the City of Stanford starting on January, I'm assuming 18th, if approved tonight, that all individuals, public and employees, shall utilize face coverings, masks, when indoors in the public setting of municipal facilities. The general guidance as part of this policy remains, shall maintain a 6-foot physical distance for staff, customers, and vendors to the greatest extent possible. Employees are required to wear a cloth face covering or approved surgical KN95 masks. Face coverings are intended to prevent transmission. The degree to which cloth face coverings, masks, and face shields are recommended is based on proximity and duration of contact. Distancing and shielding are the first line of protection and can be taken into consideration. Employees are required to practice good hand hygiene. Good hand hygiene prevents spread of disease. The best hand hygiene is frequent hand washing. All entrances to municipal facilities will be posted as masks required to enter. Policy will lapse 30 days from an enactment, and I'll put a date in here, unless further acted upon by the Stanford City Council to amend and or extend. Under the definitions, and I drew all of this from CDC guidance, the past work that was done on masking ordinances, as well as the state's masking mandates. The public is any person not employed by the City of Stanford. Public setting municipal facilities is that portions of municipally owned or leased facilities that are typically accessible to the public, including lobbies, waiting areas, elevators, service desks, hallways, meeting rooms, chambers, restrooms, and any areas outside of single occupancy enclosed offices. Face coverings, masks, are tightly woven multiple layer cloth, disposal surgical, or medical grade masks. Face coverings do not include cloth masks with valves, vents, or openings, single layer of fabric, such as neck gaiters, or thin fabric or paper that does not block light. Again, all of that is from the definitions out there by the US CDC. Exemptions would be members of the public, individuals that are medically precluded from wearing a face covering or prevents communications. As far as employees are concerned, the exemptions would be employees who are medically precluded from wearing when alone in a fully enclosed room or office, when eating or drinking, or for safety and security identification purposes. So not different than flying in TSA, you pull your mask down for identification if that's something that's needed and put it right back up. When wearing respirators or face masks, or when use of face coverings is infeasible or creates a greater hazard. One of those areas would be the public dispatchers. Their workstations have been spaced appropriately. They have the ventilation system in there. They cannot wear a face covering during the performance of their job duties because of the need to communicate by microphone. That is the relatively simplistic policy that should have a significant positive impact if so enacted by the council here this evening.
Okay, so before we continue, I'd like to have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councillor Brink. Is there a second by Councillor Stackpole? Discussion by the council first, and then I know that I have at least one person who I think is on here who wants to speak. So, councillors, anybody have any comments or questions of the city manager? I don't see any hands up. Chief Bonatti, just 1 second. I just want to make sure no councillors, so then I will go on to people who wish to speak. Chief Bonatti?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just ask that for consideration that the department heads be given some latitude as to how we work within house when it comes to the masking. Fire department's been pretty diligent about masking. We've had to, although we have not been absolved of having people with positive COVID cases from the fire department, I think we've done a good job about maintaining that. We presently had a mask policy within the department. Presently, it was enacted by myself a couple of weeks ago, but I think I would like to be able to have the latitude of, if we have to relax it at certain times, whether we could do that prior to the end of this ruling that you have proposed. Just a consideration I'm asking for.
Thank you, Chief. Steve, I would have thought that within this emergency policy, the way that it's worded, that administratively that would be within your purview to designate administrators to be able to handle their own buildings. Is that true?
Well, I was writing this as a blanket policy for the council to put in place, but where the use of face coverings is infeasible or creates a greater hazard, I put that in there explicitly to allow for those occurrences such as the chief is discussing at this point in time.
Okay.
So I believe
so
that would give the chief the latitude.
Would cover what he just, fine.
I believe so.
Chief Anderson.
Well, maybe it's been solved. I wanted to support what Chief Bernardi had said with respect to giving the department heads a little bit of latitude. We have very limited public setting here at our municipal facility. It's just that small lobby, and the gals that sit behind a half-inch bulletproof glass have really no contact with the folks on the other side. And there's only one in there now anyway, so it doesn't seem like we have that great of a public setting in our facility. I just wanted to make sure or reinforce what Chief Bernardi had said about having some latitude. I thought it was a great idea.
Thank you. Ian Housefield, go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to point out that City Hall has had strongly encouraged for wearing masking on the entrance to the city for quite some time now. And I also wanted to point out that you've been hearing from me monthly on the community's involvement and reaching out to the community regarding preventative measures. And I just wanted to say that vaccination, it's not to be forgotten here, that vaccination is how this pandemic ends. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I agree. Sue Cody, do you want to share your letter or your thoughts? We're on here, unless you're not here now. I see you, Sue. Did you want to share?
It usually takes her a sec to switch over, Anne Marie.
Having some technical difficulties.
Okay, so do you want me to just read her letter then? Is that
yes,
okay,
if
Sue?
she can't.
All right, I will do that then.
Yes.
So Sue wanted to make sure that she had some input since she is in the city clerk's office. And they have probably the most public that's coming in and out on a daily basis. She says, I am in favor of adopting the mandatory mask policy for municipal facilities. I do wish this had been done sooner, but I suppose better late than never as long as COVID remains in a high transmission across our region. I see people come into the clerk's office wearing a mask and ask if they are required. When told it is only recommended and not mandatory, some people will just keep it on. But I do see many remove the mask to conduct their business. I was on vacation the last week of December and heard from some of the clerks that customers were coming in unmasked, coughing and or sniffling and sneezing. Of course, we know that these symptoms are associated with the common cold, but also could be someone who unknowingly contracted the Omicron variant. Some people even spoke of being around family at Christmas and found that a family member had COVID or been exposed, but did not feel the need to put a mask on to come in and conduct business at City Hall. If there were funds available that could support bringing back staff that worked in the booth out back to monitor customers before they enter, I know this is likely not a feasible option with the worker shortages, so another reason why I support mandatory masking in City Hall. I personally have been wearing my mask since last fall, both at work and when out in stores, just for my own protection and my family's. I will continue to do this until the transmission rates go down in the region, but not sure that will be anytime soon. I pray that the newer variant detected in Europe that has been said to have the high level of being contagious as the Omicron, but also has the severity of symptoms as seen with the Delta variant, does not make it to our border. Thank you, Sue Cody. Okay, so any more discussion by anyone? I do not see any hands up.
Can I just say, do you think...
Absolutely. Is your hand up? Yes, you may, Deputy Mayor. Go ahead.
See, since we've had all the comment, do you think you've sufficiently covered the concerns of the police chief and the fire chief? Because, you know, I see this as a way for the Sues of the world not to have the argument and to feel better protected because they're right in the face of a lot of the public. But I also see the fire chief and the police chief's point of view because they're kind of a close-knit, working with each other, having very little interaction.
I think Steve told us in public
at
a public meeting that he can handle it within this
Well,
the
I
way
want to
that
make
it's written.
sure. I want to make sure of that, Amory. So there you go.
Well, I think I asked him that, and I think he responded, so I'm satisfied. But never hurts to ask again. Okay,
Yes,
any more
right.
discussion? I will call the roll. Counselor Brink.
Yes.
Counselor Martell, still not back. Counselor Hanselman.
Yes.
Counselor Stackpole.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herlihy. You're muted.
Yes.
Thank you. And I am also a yes. That is unanimous of all those present. Thank you, everyone. All right. Now we go on to the longer portion of the meeting. Ian, I'm going to start this in a minute, but I just want to make sure the last time you spoke with your mic, it was a little soft and I couldn't hear you that well. I don't know if it was just me, but
How's
I just
that
want
now?
to make sure.
Is that okay?
That is better, yes. Thank you.
That's better? Okay, I'll just make sure I raise my voice.
It's better than it was, yes, thank you. 22-26-01. This hearing is to determine whether the boiler house building of the International Woolen Mill, identified as tax map J29, lot 24, and further described in a deed recorded in the York County Registry of Deeds at book 15293, page 69, is a dangerous building or a nuisance within the meaning of 17 MRSA sections 2851 to 2859, and to determine what, if any, remedy is appropriate. We'll begin this hearing with the presentation by the city. Ian, I gather the floor is yours.
Thank you. And I also wanted to note that Aaron Lederer is the code enforcement officer, and he's with us here. I don't know whether or not there are any owner representatives here tonight with us as well. I should be sharing on my screen documentation for the hearing tonight. It's January 18th, 2022, and this is about the boiler house building of the International Woolen Mill. I'm going to run through a number of the documents, owner documents, the way that the owner was notified of the hearing, as well as the city's correspondences with the owner, as well as photographs of the building. I'd like to go through all that and then open it up for questions if you've got any questions, and then invite the owner or owner representative, if they're present, to respond to anything. I'd like to talk a little bit about why this property is considered dangerous according to the meaning of the law, as well as what's being proposed as far as remediating the issue. To remind you, the hearing is to determine whether the boiler house is dangerous and a nuisance. We're talking about a specific map and lot. This is a very large building and large complex, but tonight we're just talking about the boiler house, and specifically it is map and lot J2924. It's in the deed that's in the York County Registry of Deeds at page 15293 and page 69. The determination tonight is the question of whether the building is unsafe, structurally unstable, is it unsanitary, is it a fire hazard, is it unsuitable to how it is being used or occupied, is it improper to how it is being used or occupied, is it a hazard to health or safety because of inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, obsolescence, abandonment, and is it dangerous to life and property? So I'd like to make sure that we get through all those questions and raise whether or not we think or you think that it meets any of those criteria or all of those criteria. I'll start off with the vision report for this. This is the building that's referenced on that map and block. It's owned by a company called Regco Incorporated. The sale date was 2007. Prior to that, it was owned by an entity called MEDEA USA Limited. They owned it in 2003, and then prior to that, was the International Woolen Company Incorporated that purchased that property in 1993 for $1.3 million. Currently, the property is valued at $142,000 roughly.
Ian, you're going in and out sound-wise.
Am I?
I don't know. Is it just me?
I can hear him okay.
Anybody else having?
I can hear him okay.
Okay. I just said there's times when I can't hear the completion of his sentence. So it could just be my headset. Go ahead, Ian. I'm sorry.
Okay. This is the deed from the sale from MDEA USA Ltd to Regco Incorporated. The same owner dates back to the International Woolen Company. This is the site that we're talking about. It's this area J2924. It's a very sawtooth cut property. There's a right of travel. There's a parking lot next to it that accesses the Stanford mill here. There's a little bit highlighted over here, but in yellow. But we're not concerned with that area this evening. Just this mill structure that I'll talk about in further detail. This is a rather good diagram of some of the historical reference. It's helpful to understand the site's relationship and history. I'll zoom in a second. This is a print shop. Over here was this Aerofab building that was previously demolished. This is that site of that parking lot that you see here. You can see this. This is the river that passes through here. You'll see also this office appear in many of the pictures. And this is the area that we're concerned with tonight, the boiler house. I'm just zooming in a little bit to show some of these pictures. At one point, the one area of this building had a turbine room, a pump room, and a block shop joining this boiler house under one section. A number of these little areas here, these are sewer and water maps that you're seeing as well here. So you're seeing some of these junctions. So that's referencing 10-inch, 10-inch, 8-inch in some of these areas. And then off to this, at this time when this map was created, this was the finishing room in that area. And I'm going to zoom in. This is a pretty large area, but the area, you can see that the river passes through this area. At one point, these areas were owned by a company called Passamaquoddy Properties, and then the boiler house is down in this area. I wanted to point out some of the portions of this building. You'll see them in the presentation. This circular diagram here with the X through it with a circle on top represents a stack. That stack is no longer here. This is the stack that you can see still on the skyline. This says 1, 2, 3 in this area. Those represent 3 boilers. These are steam boilers. They appear to be, from the picture I was able to take, Cleaver Brooks boilers that are along that side of the wall. And then here are some of these rooms that were referenced in the prior issue, the prior picture. It was interesting to see. You can see that there's a railroad trestle that passed over this area, and then in this vicinity it says 3 10,000-gallon fuel oil tanks buried. So there's 1, 2, 3. You'll see that, and this line here represents the edge of what I just showed you on those that tax map as well. Over in this area, this is that parking lot that is outside the area. But you'd see that there's other buildings that used to be here, such as the Aerofab building. For example, it says aircraft in this area of what used to be in this vicinity. there's an environmental covenant that rests on this property. This covenant can be found at book 16125, page 271. It talks about pollution and contamination, and it limits the use of all these properties that are the International Woolen Mill. The boiler house itself, it's obsolete and would not be used in the same manner, and it's limited in the ways that it may be used. For example, you could not put residential housing in this area, for example. As far as the notice of this hearing went, this is Regco. They're based in Miami, Florida. They were notified of this hearing. This notice was filed in the Registry of Deeds at book 18901, page 477. This notifies the owner that this hearing was taking place. It talks about how the meeting could be attended. Since this is a remote meeting, it's actually a lot easier for someone who might be in Florida to attend this meeting. So it talks about how they can gain access via video and teleconference to attend the hearing. And then it also talks about what the hearing is about. This notice was received by certified mail. You can see that it is received at the front desk of that address, and it was signed for prior to the hearing. And in this case, it was received on December 27th at 2021 and signed for with that scrawling there. In addition, this was advertised in the newspaper. It was advertised in the local newspaper, the Stanford Springvale News, on 3 separate occasions to make sure that everybody's properly notified and when you're unsure about the ownership. So this is above and beyond the minimum requirement. So just to be clear that the owner is notified here. And then in addition, this was advertised in the paper on December 30th, January 7th, and then January 14th as well. So those are the 3 advertisements. The most recent notifications of violations were sent to the owner on September 13th, 2021, and as well on November 19th, 2021. The first notice was received by certified mail, and these are the receipt of those notices, and they were also sent via first-class mail. So not only did the owner receive notice of these notice of violations by regular mail, they also received the notices by certified mail. The final notice in this case was not received by certified mail. The mail was lost. I checked it as late as this evening. It was somewhere in Florida. It had not been delivered, but we're very comfortable that the notice had been received in a final format by regular mail. I'd like to walk through, and I'll ask for Code Enforcement Officer Letter's concurrence on this. He signed the notice of violation, and it talks about the violations that were received. So to start, it talks about how the property is unsafe, it's structurally unstable, it's partially collapsed, and the roof is damaged. And he references section 304.118 of the city code, which is the International Property Code Maintenance Code as adopted by reference edition 2015, found under City Code 9013B, section 5. Then additionally, that the property is unmaintained, It's overgrown with vegetation under the International Property Maintenance Code, Section 302.4. It's also unsecure in that it's a dangerous premises under Section 108.1.5.7. I have to slide down here for a second and turn my page. It has unsafe masonry walls, and that's Section 306.1.1.4. Unsafe and unsecure broken, cracked, and missing windows under 304.13.1. Unsafe and structurally unstable, decaying, and deteriorated exhaust stack, and that's Section 304.11. And then also exterior walls are unmaintained, having holes, breaks, loose, and rotting materials under Section 304.6. And finally, the property is dangerous, dilapidated, abandoned, and an attractive nuisance, and a harbor for vagrants under Section 108.1.5. Additionally, I'm going to point out that the under City Code vacant building license, the property has ceased their participation in the vacant building license, and currently they are past due for multiple terms with an amount owed of $5,400. There are a number of pictures in here as well. They're very illustrative and very helpful to understand why this constitutes a dangerous structure. I'll move through them here. So you can see some of the missing windows, multiple cases of where the brick is decaying, other vacant windows, the vandalism that has taken place on the side of the building, the defacement, cracks in the walls, the vegetative overgrowth on the side of the walls. In this case, Code Enforcement Officer Lederer was, this is an excellent picture. You can see the tree growing out of the top of the stack. In some cases, trees growing through windows, indicating very much abandonment. And then continued pictures of how plants and overgrowth are coming through the walls in certain areas where the walls have fallen away, where the vegetation again is coming through certain walls. So these notice of violations were unanswered. I also want to put in the city correspondences section, a letter from the abutting property owner, Northland, that operates the Stanford Mill next door. This was brought to the attention of Mayor Anne Marie Mastracchio, the Stanford City Council, the Stanford Code Enforcement Office, and as well as the city manager, Stephen Buck. They talked about how they're very concerned about the two abandoned mill properties on Heritage Crossing, and the neglect of these vacant and abandoned buildings. They included a number of pictures. They talked about the obscene and hate-filled graffiti that were placed on it. They mentioned a swastika. They were disappointed that this was the entrance to their facility. They showed pictures of, I mentioned the office building next door, but broken windows and people sleeping in the doorways of these facilities. And they felt that this was an area that was used to congregate and use drugs. They found needles and behind the pump house in the vicinity. So these are some other the pictures of the area in the vicinity owned by the same owner, and then they signed with their request that something be done about this. I talked about the final notice. Additionally, this was prior to this hearing. This was again on November 19th, 2021. It is a restatement of the same notice that was sent in September, documenting exactly the same issues that were received but unaddressed in September. Aaron, is there anything I should add at this time about your notices of violation, any correspondences, or any responses from the owner?
No, you covered the notice of violation really well. I still have not heard or received any sort of vacant renewal, any correspondence regarding our violation notice. And I can confirm too that while I was there were individuals sleeping in those doorways as well. The police came and tried to help the individuals too. So it certainly represents the condition of the property accurately.
Thank you, Aaron. I also included a document. This is a registration form for the National Registry of Historic Places. This is a historic district. This is the Stanford Mill Historic District. What I found most useful about this document was this section. It talks about the boiler house. In the report, it is a contributing building to the historic district, and it talks about how the building was constructed in 4 phases between 1882 and 1930. It was originally a narrow rectangular plan. The width of the building was doubled in 1906 with the construction of an addition along the west side bordering Pioneer Avenue. At that time, it was called Allen Street. And then in 1921, another addition was built on the south end of the building, followed by the third major addition in 1930 along the east side, effectively surrounding the original structure. So there's we're somewhat familiar with it. It's a very steep slope site, and the upper level of the building is exposed along Pioneer Avenue. However, it's the red brick building is the earliest section. It's 2 stories high and has a flat roof. The original windows were tall windows and are still visible in the interior. Steel sashes are installed on the tops of these windows openings, probably when the building circa 1930 was constructed. The west elevation of the building facing Pioneer is plain brick with little fenestration other than a few small arch windows, which you'll see in a later picture. An historic brick stack, likely from 1880, rose from the center of the main block. The south addition is fully exposed at its east elevation and features very large windows and multi-pane sashes and flat cast concrete window sills and lintels. I'm not going to read that rest of the part. And then all that remains of the tall brick stack that was constructed in 1921 is the base. So I heard that and I showed you where the other structure was, but one of the exhaust stacks is gone, and it was removed in 2008. I've heard a number of different stories about how that happened. There's some that it collapsed, and I don't think the answer is removed. I think it fell, and I'll be able to show that. And then a large gable roof was added on the south addition in recent years, and the east addition is stylistic, similar to the 1920s manufactured building in the complex, with concrete piers, brick panels, and very large multi-pane windows. So I'll keep on going here. And then as typical with the city correspondences, we also include all the police logs for the vicinity. This, I think is one of the longer ones that we've received. It is 4 pages long, and it's in your documents. I won't go through each one of them, but they're in your packet if you wanted to review the immense amount of time that the police department has spent resolving issues and attempting to resolve issues in this vicinity. So I'm going to run through the photos at this time. These are the photos for the boiler house. And just a reminder, this is a particular site. And these are some of the close-ups. So I do need to spend a few minutes on this photo. This photo was taken in 2017. You can see the area where I mentioned that there were 3 underground storage tanks. So that's where my mouse cursor is now, over in this area. This is where that trestle is that I was explaining earlier. There's the parking lot where the previous Aerofab building is. This is the existing stack that you can see on the skyline. And this is the extent of the property boundary. This appears as if it's going through the roof of the building, but what you're really seeing is that this junction point is the base. So there's an offset in the aerial photograph that slightly conflicts with what you're viewing here. The green areas you can see are trees growing up through the building, and you'll see some additional greenery in some areas on top of the building. Attempt to, I think if I go to the next page here now, I'll just showing, I dropped the property boundary just to get better view of this. But what I'm going to attempt to do here is just zoom in to the extent of the resolution, so you can see what is apparent, but not always noticed. It's a good idea to understand. So I said that in this area there was a stack from that picture. What you're seeing here is actually brick, and that brick is resting on top of the roof. What you're seeing in this area is really failing roof. And if you look in this area, you can see brick resting partway down inside the building. Like I said, here's the stack that's existing. This black area is a hole. You're seeing all the way clear through to the floor. This is a double height area or high bay area that you're seeing all the way down 2 stories, if not more, to the floor, and you're seeing collapsed roof within this aerial photograph. These are somewhat of a clear story structure. They're broken. Those dark areas are where the roof is not present. And then over in this area, you're seeing pooled water and dirt that's accumulating where the roof is getting quite heavy. I'll show you another picture in a few minutes where you can look up. These holes that you see, these black areas, are actually holes. So in a few minutes, you'll be able to see the light from shining in through this door, looking up through that area. And then over here, you can see a better picture of these 3 oil tanks. In this vicinity, there's actually it appears to be a very large oil tank. And then as well, it's unclear how safe this area is. I don't think it would support people walking on top of that. So that's an aerial photograph for now. If you had questions at a later time, we can come back to that. And but it's quite revealing as to why this building constitutes dangerous, why this roof is structurally unsafe, why the building is unsafe in general, and then we can talk a little bit more about why this building, the roof, the stack, are dangerous to life and property. This picture comes up occasionally. I wanted to say again that this is part of the International Woolen Mill. The building that we're talking about is just to the right of where this picture is taken. There are a number of photos in here. They're taken from just last week on January 13th. Prior to that, there's a singular photo taken on the 4th of January. Other photos were taken in the public domain in July of July 14th of 2021, and then pictures were taken of the interior in 2019 on August 28th, and then as well 2019 June 5th. So there's a number of pictures from the interior that were taken in that time frame. Just to zoom out, I'm sure you're all aware, but there's the stack that's mentioned. The boiler house would not include this loading dock area, but is this gabled area off to the left. It includes where I'm running my cursor on the edge up into about this area where then it has those underground storage tanks. This is that gabled section that I just talked about. There is use of this property. So if you remember where the property boundary is, it's somewhere right about here, and it heads off at around this direction. There is use of this property. I do not believe it's by the owner, but it's an indicator of abandonment, as the owner is not controlling the property and the owner has not taken an interest into who is using the property. But that's what these trailers are. You'll see that these trailers have moved in some pictures, and I'll attempt to point that out. You can see some of the tree growth. For example, here's a tree growing up from the foundation edge. This has, been growing for probably 10 years, about in that range. Here's another tree in this area. You can see some of the other trees. These are birch. These take a while to get this large. And then you can also see how this facility is still integrated with the other section of the International Woolen Mill. You can see that openings are boarded up, blocked off, excuse me. These are openings that are blocked off, and in other cases, openings are windows are broken. This is an area, this section has been boarded. And you can see some boarded and broken windows in this section, as well as the tree growth, very close, if not coming from the foundation. As well as Code Enforcement Officer Lederer showed you, the amount of vegetative growth taking over the sides of the building. I have centered in on this particular shot. This area right here is a mattress. It's lying in front of the door. There are footsteps to the mattress. This is an opening. Access to the interior through this particular area is unfettered at this point. You can easily get through, and it looks as if people have. That's an area, you've seen that in the aerial photograph. I was pointing that area out, and I'll show you some pictures of the interior in a moment. You can see the plant growth coming from the top of the stack in that picture. In this case, what you're seeing here is transformers. I can see DEP written on it. I can't tell you whether or not this contains PCB or whether these were determined not to. However, transformer fluid is not to be left lying around. So at this point, this is hazardous material. These are transformers that are just disused, but have been left abandoned at this location. Here's a closer picture of, you can see that the footprints going up to and around this mattress and the door, not going inside, but being able to just take a camera and leave it in the entrance, in the window, as someone might be able to. This is a picture of what can be seen inside. In this case, there's not much things. You can see some piping coming down from other areas, and beyond, I believe this would be the stack base. There's a variety of equipment in the background there, in the foreground of the stack. Just being able to see of what is laying around. There's just a variety of sheets of material, and then additionally, this is the picture looking up in this area to 4 stories in height, in that little bit of a tower in that area. And you can see in this case, rather than seeing darkness in the aerial photograph down, you're seeing light, and these are these areas that you're seeing. This is all rotted. There's nothing that's keeping the elements out, and completely allowing rain. Would not support any weight whatsoever, and it's structurally unstable, and it's unsafe. Another picture, you can see where some of these areas have been boarded. Other areas, other sections of buildings have been removed from the area. You can see boarding again. I'll switch again to another photo. Just different angles. I try to get around the whole building to fully document it. You're seeing the same transformers in this area, as well as the plant overgrowth. Additional missing windows, additional sections, tree growth. Much of the same as far as the same windows. And then again, you're seeing footprints heading off into the corner, trees growing in this area. And also there's evidence of people walking up on top of this area here. This is where those underground storage tanks are, seeking to gain entrance into the building or other places. So this picture is now up on Pioneer Avenue, and I wanted to spend just a few moments with this. This really goes to the heart of how this property is unmaintained, abandoned, dilapidated, and in this case, what you're looking at here is fencing. There's a drop. It's a story to a story and a half off to this side to where those oil tanks are. This is the property boundary of what's being controlled by the Stanford mill. And then this is chain link fence with barbed wire up on top. You can see the tracks of the city's sidewalk plow as it goes around, because the fencing is leaning and falling into the sidewalk. You can see the sidewalk plow head out and around and go back onto the sidewalk. This is also very, very dangerous. This is a view of the drop from behind that area, with the plant growth coming up through where the oil tanks are stored, and you can see the barbed wire here. All of this tops of this chain links, it doesn't look like it in this picture, but you saw from the other picture, they're leaning out into the sidewalk, enough so that it's about eye level, and someone can get very seriously hurt by this. It's impacting the public way, and it's impacting the public. And if if someone was to get cut by this, this is definitely an unsanitary condition and just unsafe, and it just makes walking just completely unacceptable. It's unclear as to whether or not this sign is still accurate. It's kind of behind a tree. It seems that it's been suggested that it's for sale or lease. I did reach out to John Anderson to find out if that was the intention, but I received no response. You can see the top of the gable end in this picture. And then looking back, you can see these little window slits that I mentioned in that discussion of the historic nature of it. And then in this case, it looks as if some of the graffiti that was put on top of here on the wall had been removed. And you can see the sidewalk plows path until the point when it hits the chain link fence at this location. In this case, you can see some of the trees just at the very edge poking through the roof here. Here's another shot of trees coming up, and you can make out in this picture trees as well in the stack. There was through one of those little slits in the wall on Pioneer, you could look inside the building, and this is what was found last week. Try to dissect some of what you're seeing. This is brick. This seems to be a large pile of brick. This would be the stack, and this would be the base of the stack. You can see pieces of building hanging down, and mostly what you're seeing here is white snow. You can see trees coming up through the brick. So the trees have found footing and they've started to grow. You can see a set of stairs leading off in this direction, and then beams holding up, columns holding up this section of the roof. And then as well, you can also see this reverse truss. So, and these are tension members holding up this section of the roof that hasn't yet collapsed. In the background over here, you'll see some other pictures, but these are the Cleaver Brooks boilers that I spoke of. I believe this is from this image, the furthest one away. There's probably one in this vicinity, and then another one in this vicinity, judging by this picture. And then I was able to count up 7 drums. So I just want to remind you that this picture is from 2022, from January, just last week. And just those are those drums that you can see there. Keep those in mind as I go through these photos. I tried to take a picture over in this area. You can see where the roof is collapsed. So again, this is the Pioneer wall that you're looking at through. This is right here is this asbestos pipe wrap. So there is a fair amount of asbestos pipe wrap here and there throughout. This is very much a dangerous condition, and this is an environmental hazard that continues. Just opening up to the left here, there are some there's some other equipment, and I don't really I have not ventured inside this building myself, so I couldn't speak, but you can see the holes and the collapsing roof above. We discussed this area over here, and then in the far ground, you can see other debris and other equipment and other items cast throughout. Tried to take a photo of the roof here. These are clearly for a section steel beams They look relatively in good shape. And then you can see this this wood truss structure in this area that was mentioned in the historic review. This is just a photo from afar. I think we have a sense of that so far. You can see the trailers in different states of use. Looks as if someone has plowed the area in this photo that I was reviewing. This is from earlier in January of this year, January 4th. This photo was taken back in June of 2019. Here that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 at this point looks to be drums. I don't know what's inside, but they're present, and they're still present in a building that's collapsing. Here's one of the boilers that you can see from in that picture. A variety of debris and equipment. There's many pallets stored back in here. You're seeing daylight, and this is the base of that stack as it goes through and down to the bottom of the building. Quite a lot of green down here. It's basically because the rain is coming through and collecting. In this case, you can see 2 boilers. I can't make out the third one. It must be buried underneath all that brick. This is the connection between the buildings. Again, you can see asbestos pipe wrap. This is asbestos within that. And then you can see the boilers from the walkway between the buildings as well. So that's the first, and then the second, and you can see a fair amount of exhaust venting, and then as well the numerous holes in the roof, and then as well also the reverse truss. This truss itself is unsalvageable. There's nothing about this that can be reused. For example, you can see that this is askew. These tension trusses rely upon the vertical members here, and as these rot or if portions of those fall away, modern construction methods would not support this this form of construction anymore, and it appears as if large sections of the roof are built in this way. Again, additional
Ian,
photos.
Can I
of
interrupt you
trusses.
at this point?
Sure.
I think you've got a pretty good, unless there's something, I mean, if you're just going to add more to me, I'm satisfied that the city's presented a pretty good, picture of what the building looks like. So unless you've got a lot more that you want to show, I'm just thinking that we might get along to the owner response if there is any, unless there's something you feel we absolutely might need to judge whether this is truly a dangerous building.
Let me, and I will, Madam Mayor, just let me get through these last 3 photos here. I wanted to tell you a little, just make sure we get, these are quite descriptive in the condition of the stack, and I wanted to get through those so you can see some additional photos of the roof. In this case, you can see a very close-up. This was flown by drone footage. Someone recorded the collapsing roof. This is absolutely a danger to life and property. And then I also wanted to point out the presence of the equipment, as you can see down on the ground here. You can see a number of the bricks askew. You can see them missing. So this means that these bricks have fallen off. They could drop on someone's car. They could drop on someone's head. And I think I can rest at this point. I think I have covered everything. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you presented an interesting, pretty comprehensive case. Is there an owner here to present the owner response? I don't see anyone. Do you, Ian?
I don't know who Alex H is, and then there was one other H. Hagen. That was the only one that I noticed in the attendee list that could have been someone.
Doesn't Alex work in codes, or no?
There is an Alex that works in codes. However, I don't make assumptions.
Yeah, I think that's
okay,
Alex.
Can
She's
you,
been to other
do
meetings.
you mind showing me the whole, stop the screen sharing, Ian, so I can
Yes.
see everyone?
Yes.
So I just can see when hands go up, if you don't mind. Now's the time for the City Council to ask questions, clarifying questions to make sure they understand the facts and the criteria of dangerousness before I close the hearing. Oh, Jonathan, you're back with us.
John's back. John's back.
Yeah, sorry. My internet just completely went out for a little bit, so thank you.
Okay, I don't see any questions. I think we all understand the facts and the criteria of dangerousness, so I will close the hearing. 22-27-01. Based on the testimony and other evidence presented at the hearing pursuant to 17 MRSA sections 2851 to 2859 regarding the boiler house of the International Woolen Mill, what does the City Council find are the facts, and what does the City Council adjudge? Based on the testimony of those present and other evidence presented and made part of the record, the Stanford City Council hereby attests to the testimony and evidence and hereby finds the following facts. A, the owner has owned the building, the property, since 1993, at that time as the International Woolen Company Incorporated, but has abandoned the building and allowed the building to become a hazard to health and safety because of inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, obsolescence, and abandonment. The building is dangerous to life and property. Excuse me. There is an environmental covenant upon the property due to pollutant contamination, restricting and limiting its uses. The covenant can be found in the York County Registry of Deeds at Book 16125, page 271. The boiler house use itself is obsolete and could not be used in the same manner again. C, inspections on September 13th, 2021, and again on November 19th, 2021, found dangerous conditions and other violation of City Code Chapter 90-13B5, 2015 International Property Maintenance Code, as adopted by reference. Unsafe, structurally unstable, partially collapsed and damaged roof structure, inadequate maintenance and damage of and defacement of the exterior of the property, unmaintained and overgrown vegetation, unsecured dangerous premises, unsafe masonry walls, unsafe and unsecure, broken, cracked, and missing window, unsafe and structurally unstable, decaying and deteriorated exhaust stack, exterior walls are unmaintained, having holes, breaks, loops, and rotting material. The property is dangerous, dilapidated, abandoned, and an attractive nuisance and a harbor for vagrants. D, the building shows many signs of abandonment, including being used in ways that are unsuitable and improper to the intended use of the building as a boiler house. Trees and plants grow inside of and through the walls of the building, inadequately unmaintained for an extended length of time. There is a lack of site and building security, and access to the building interior is unfettered. The building is generally describable as dilapidated with broken windows and boarded and blocked openings. Equipment has been left while the building collapses on top of it, and others use the property for activities freely and without control or interest of the owner. E, the barbed wire fence along Pioneer Ave leaning over onto the public way is unsafe enough so to block the sidewalk and restrict snow plowing of the public way. The sharp protrusions of the fence can cut walking passerbys, making an unsanitary and dangerous condition to those walking. F, the roof structure is structurally unstable and unsafe. In places, the roof is absent, collapsed, and having rotted is in the process of collapsing down to the floor below and upon remaining equipment and facilities in the building. The tension roof trusses have failed and are not repairable, posing a continued fall hazard to anyone below. G, G, the exhaust stack is structurally unstable and unsafe. Vegetation is visibly growing from the stack and bricks are loose, cracked, and askew and obviously have dislodged and have fallen, creating a dangerous condition to life and property below and nearby. The stack must be removed safely. H, at least 3 fire tube boilers were observed in the building buried under brick and other debris. These boilers are unusable and must be removed safely. I, other unusable equipment and waste, including drummed waste, asbestos-covered pipe, and other debris remains inside the building. There are abandoned transformers outside the building. This equipment and debris must be removed safely. Based on the foregoing findings, the City Council adjudges that the property is a dangerous building and nuisance because the building and its components are structurally unsafe and unstable, are improper and unsuitable for the use to which they were put, constitutes a hazard to health or safety because of inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, and abandonment, and are otherwise dangerous to life and property. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Councilor Stackpole. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Brink. Any more discussion? Any discussion by the council?
All I'm going to say is it's about time, I'd say, that we start to deal with this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that the deputy mayor? I just would like to see people. Can you take that down, Ian, for just a second, please, the screen sharing, so I can see the council? Thank you. Okay, so councilors first for discussion.
Yeah,
Councilor Brink, go ahead. 1 second, Jonathan. I'm calling on people with their hands up. Councilor Brink, go ahead.
I can't believe a company would abandon this building in that condition and not feel some responsibility to the safety of the people, the kids who, and the homeless people who would be in there. I just wish there was some way we could make this company pay for demolishing this.
Well, they will pay for whatever we have to spend to make it safe. So eventually we'll get our money. Councilor Martell.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's too bad that it's gotten to this point. I know that stack is sort of a landmark. It has some historical significance, but it does appear as though that it's in pretty bad shape and not something you could just sort of leave as a historical thing. And just as a comment on the other stack, if I remember correctly, I believe the other stack did fall down.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it was removed to keep it from spilling out into the street anymore. So that's probably why it's sort of the way it is, but that's what I remember. But I think that was about 15, 20 years ago. It was a while ago.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Martell. Is there any other comments or questions or discussion by the council? Then I will call on Diane Connolly as a member of the public.
Madam Mayor, I have a question for Mr. Houseville. The chain link fence area on Pioneer, is that impacting the wall that is in pretty bad shape that has been discussed previous times in council?
Ian, did you want to answer that?
Ms. Connolly, I'm not exactly sure. I'd like to have more understanding of that. The wall's coming out into the street, not falling off the side of the building, but that's the best I can tell.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, is there any more discussion by the council? Seeing none, then I'm going to call the vote. Councilor Brink?
Yes.
Councilor Martell?
Yes.
Councilor Hanselman?
Yes.
Councilor Stackpole?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herlihy?
Yes.
I am also a yes. That is unanimous of all those present. 22-28-01. After hearing testimony and other evidence presented and then making findings of fact and then adjudging the boiler house of the International Woolen Mill to be a dangerous building or a nuisance pursuant to 17 MRSA sections 2851 to 2859, the City Council now makes the following orders to abate the nuisance and appropriate corrective actions taken. It is ordered that to protect the health, safety, and welfare, the property is to be immediately secured within 24 hours. And be it further ordered that any and all rubbish, debris, vehicles, equipment, household, human, hazardous waste, and dangerous materials are to be removed from the property and properly disposed, and the property maintained free of debris and plant growth within 30 days. And be it further ordered that to protect the health, safety, and welfare, the said dangerous building and nuisance is to be immediately abated, building removed, disposed, secured. And be it further ordered, if the owner or party in interest demonstrates the ability and willingness to satisfactorily rehabilitate the building by submitting and having a rehabilitation plan approved by the city manager within 30 days of recording this order and carrying out such a rehabilitation plan in a timely manner, the order to immediately abate the dangerous building and nuisance may be delayed. Such rehabilitation plan must include, at a minimum, all deficiencies listed as part of the findings of fact as herein set forth are corrected. The building is rehabilitated and brought into compliance with all applicable state and local codes and meets all permitting and inspection requirements. There shall be no occupancy or use of the building until the property has been satisfactorily rehabilitated. And be it further ordered that the city clerk record this order in the York County Registry of Deeds and cause attested copies of this order to be served upon the persons as required by law. And be it further ordered that if this order is not complied with, the city manager is hereby authorized and directed to ask for bids for the abatement, buildings, removal, disposal, securing of the said dangerous building and nuisance. And be it further ordered that if this order is not timely complied with and no timely appeal is taken, the city manager may undertake the ordered corrective action at municipal expense and recover all expenses, including reasonable attorney's fees, by means of a special tax or civil action. This decision may be appealed to Superior Court pursuant to Main Rule of Civil Procedure 80B. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move we approve.
Motion by Councilor Stackpole. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Brink. Is there any more discussion? Seeing none, I'll
yeah.
call the roll. Oh, I'm sorry. There's a hand up?
There is no hand up. You are correct.
Okay. Did somebody want to speak? Okay. So Councilor Brink,
Yes.
Councilor Martell,
Yes.
Councilor Hanselman,
Yes.
Councilor Stackpole,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herlihy.
Yes.
I am also a yes. That is unanimous of all those present. Thank you, Ian. Council member comments. All right, let's go through this list. Councilor Brink, do you have anything this evening?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Councilor Martell, do you have anything this evening?
Nothing today other than I just wanted to say that the road crews did a great job of salting the roads. This storm was exceptionally odd, and I know there was some issues getting the sidewalks cleared off, but you know, I had to drive around a little bit this morning, and the roads were pretty well cleared off with salt, so it was great. Thank you.
Councilor Hanselman?
Tonight, thank you.
Councilor Stackpole?
All set tonight. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Herlihy?
I'll mimic what Jonathan said about the roads. I do note that on Facebook they are discussing the sidewalk, so I don't know if there's some sort of plan we can have to kind of give people a better understanding of how the process of taking care of the roads goes. And I know there are people on Facebook who are talking to them about shortness of staff, and so it's well handled just by people who understand what's happening in the city. But still, it's, you know, the sidewalks I know are a concern, especially for those who don't have any transportation. Just so people know, it's a topic on Facebook right now. And as we're preparing our presentation for the Sherburne Street discussion, obviously that's, you know, there's gonna be some emotion tied to that. Those are two old streets in two different communities, and one of them is potentially going to lose their name. has to lose their name. But one of the questions that came up, which could probably be made part of the presentation, is someone asked if they were going to have to fix their deed. And I described to them, no, you wouldn't have to fix your deed, because a deed is more than just a street number. And it's done meets and bounds, or they describe it on an old plan. But it might be nice to actually add that to any presentation when we have the neighborhood group together, to make sure that they can understand that clearly. And other than that, happy birthday, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
I just have one thing this evening that I wanted, and it has to do with plowing, because I have to tell you that I don't think anybody could have gotten those sidewalks plowed unless everybody was working at the exact same instant, because once it turned over, if you didn't go out at that very exact instant, I don't care how good you weren't going to get everything off your driveway or your sidewalk. So I think they did a darn good job just getting the roads clear enough so people could get to work or get where they needed to go. I'm hoping that if they can put down some salt and have a little sun, those sidewalks will be as clear as they were, because I think the new sidewalk plows seem to be doing a pretty good job at getting at least the main sidewalks plowed up. And one other comment, I just want to remind the general public out there that if you don't get your trash out in time and you miss the pickup, you cannot leave your trash out there for another whole week till the next week. Because when you have a snowstorm in between, that trash ends up on somebody else's property. So just as a reminder, I'm sorry, but I'm going to encourage people who call and complain to me that they actually call and complain about it, and we start citing these individuals who don't understand that trash is to be put out. I think it can be put out the night before, but at the very end, but it can't be put out like a day before or 24 hours. We do have an ordinance about when trash can be put out, and I would really appreciate people taking note of the fact, if it doesn't get picked up, bring it back in. I think we are to agenda items. Councillor Brink, do you have any future agenda items?
No, I don't. Not at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Martel?
Nothing for tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Hanselman?
Just one for public safety. I think it'd be great to hear from Chief Bonatti or our deputy chief at the fire station with a brief update on kind of the happenings at the fire station. Not that they have to do it as frequently as the police department, but it'd be great to hear from them. No urgency though on that request.
Thank you. Councillor Stackpole?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Herlihy?
Nothing this evening, thank you.
And I don't have anything either, so I will declare us adjourned and see you all, councilors, next week. We have a workshop Tuesday night, 6 o'clock on Zoom.
And then Wednesday night, Anne Marie, we have...
Well, they all know that. I'll remind them that next Tuesday when it's closer to the time. Thanks, everyone.
Happy birthday.
Good night.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.